The story begins in the quiet spaces between history and imagination, where whispers of the past drift like a gentle breeze through the corridors of memory. There exists a garden that never dies, a place both real and imagined, where time seems to fold in upon itself, leaving traces of eternity in every stone, leaf, and shadow. Scholars speak of it in careful tones, tracing fragments of texts and inscriptions that hint at its existence, while storytellers and poets have painted it in colors far brighter than the tangible world could ever hold. It is a garden suspended between worlds, alive in imagination, yet always just beyond the reach of certainty. Here, in the delicate intersection of myth and reality, we begin our journey, not to conquer knowledge, but to wander slowly through the layers of time, allowing the garden to reveal itself gently, as a dream might unfurl in the quiet of night. Even in the earliest records, the garden's presence is elusive. Ancient texts speak of verdant spaces hidden beyond mountains and rivers, sanctuaries where life thrives eternally, untouched by decay or sorrow. These accounts are fragmentary, sometimes contradictory, yet they persist with remarkable consistency. The garden's endurance in human consciousness suggests that it is not merely a physical place, but a symbol, a reflection of something deeper within ourselves, the longing for continuity, for beauty unblemished by the passing of years. As we walk through these stories, we begin to see the garden not only as a destination, but as a mirror reflecting the desires, fears, and dreams of generations long gone. Archaeologists approach the garden with measured steps, their tools and methods precise, yet even they encounter moments of wonder, a fragment of pottery, a remnant of a wall, a trace of cultivated soil, all speak quietly of human hands shaping paradise. In these moments, the line between fact and myth blurs, the dry earth beneath our feet seems to whisper tales of caretakers who sought to preserve life against the relentless march of time. The garden becomes a site of delicate tension, where empirical evidence hints at something vast and unseen, where the imagination must fill in the gaps, guided by the faint pulse of history itself. Stories of the garden are not confined to texts alone. They echo through art, through symbols carved into stone and painted on walls, in the delicate gardens of ancient palaces, in patterns that speak of harmony and eternal renewal. These expressions suggest a universal longing, a human attempt to grasp what cannot fully be held. They speak of life that persists, of beauty that endures, of spaces where sorrow does not touch the heart. As we trace these patterns, we notice how each culture imbues the garden with its own essence, yet the central mystery, the promise of undying vitality, remains remarkably consistent. The garden is everywhere and nowhere, both a tangible dream and an intangible hope. The landscape of the garden is described in tones both vivid and ethereal. Gentle streams curve through glades that shimmer with light and shadow. Ancient trees stretch their limbs toward the sky, their roots entwined with the stories of the people who once tended them. Flowers bloom in impossible colors, their fragrance lingering even in the imagination. Time itself seems slower here, each moment stretched into a long contemplative breath. This is a place where one could wander without urgency, where silence carries the weight of centuries, and where every rustle of leaves seems to tell a story that has waited long for a listener. Yet, alongside this beauty, there is an undeniable sense of mystery. The garden never fully reveals itself. Some claim to have glimpsed it in remote valleys or hidden ruins, while others insist that it exists only in memory and imagination. The more we seek it through the lens of archaeology, the more it eludes us, as if guarding secrets that are not meant to be fully uncovered. This tension between what is known and what remains hidden is the very essence of its allure. It invites patience, reflection, and a gentle surrender to wonder, reminding us that some mysteries are not meant to be solved but experienced. As night falls across the landscapes of history, the garden begins to glow softly in our minds. We sense its presence in the quiet moments between research and storytelling, between waking and dreaming. Each legend we encounter, each fragment of evidence we uncover adds a brushstroke to a vision that is greater than the sum of its parts. It is a vision that calls not for immediate understanding, but for attentive observation, for a slow wandering immersion into layers of history, myth, and imagination. And so our journey begins, not with the promise of certainty, but with the gentle invitation to enter a garden where time, memory, and legend intertwine, and where the soul may find a place to rest, even as it marvels at the eternal bloom of life that never fades. Across the vast stretches of human history, the garden that never dies has captured imagination in ways both subtle and profound. Long before maps could chart its hidden valleys, or scholars could sift through soil for traces of its existence, storytellers wove its image into the fabric of culture, leaving threads of myth that persist even today. These tales vary in detail, sometimes whispering of golden pathways and singing fountains, other times describing silent groves where shadows move like living spirits. Yet, despite differences in language, geography, or era, a single motif endures: the garden is eternal, an emblem of life that refuses decay, a place where time seems to bend, pause, and stretch into infinity. Early civilizations, from the lush river valleys of Mesopotamia to the sun-baked temples of Egypt, spoke of paradisiacal gardens as spaces of divine encounter. In cuneiform tablets and hieroglyphic inscriptions, references emerge to gardens of abundance where rare plants, animals, and waters mingled in harmony. These descriptions, at once precise and poetic, hint at human attempts to capture the perfect union of nature and spirit. Archaeologists, studying these artifacts, note careful planning in irrigation systems and horticultural layouts, suggesting that even the earliest gardeners sought to manifest paradise in physical form. Yet, alongside these practical details, the texts are alive with mystery, prayers, and incantations that seem to call not only upon water and soil, but upon forces unseen, inviting protection, growth, and endurance. As centuries passed, the garden entered the realm of literature and philosophy. Ancient poets imagined it as both refuge and revelation, a space where the human soul might encounter eternal truths. In Eastern traditions, gardens were portrayed as microcosms of the universe, each stone and plant a symbol, each path a journey toward enlightenment. In the West, stories of sacred orchards and hidden groves echoed similar themes, blending spiritual aspiration with earthly delight. Despite the differences in cultural lens, one constant remained: the garden was never merely decorative or practical. It was a repository of meaning, a bridge between the ephemeral human experience and something far greater, a place where life, memory, and imagination converged. Oral traditions also carried the garden across time, often more fluid than written texts, but equally powerful. Travelers and pilgrims recounted glimpses of verdant spaces beyond deserts and mountains, places where trees bore fruit untouched by decay, and streams sang eternal melodies. These stories, passed through generations, evolved with each retelling. Names changed, details shifted, yet the essence, the garden as a sanctuary beyond the reach of mortality, remained steadfast. In some regions, the garden became a symbol of moral virtue, in others, a refuge for the soul, and sometimes, simply a place of quiet contemplation. These narratives, ephemeral as they may seem, shaped collective consciousness, guiding communities in how they imagined harmony, beauty, and resilience. The interplay between legend and history is particularly striking when we examine texts that straddle both worlds. Chronicles of explorers describe distant lands with meticulous observation, noting flora, fauna, and irrigation techniques, yet often these accounts are punctuated with wonder, uncertainty, and hints of the supernatural. Travelers speak of gardens so lush they defy the known climate, trees bearing fruits of impossible colors, waters that seem to shimmer with unseen energy. Scholars suggest that these embellishments, far from undermining the factual core, reveal a human need to connect the known with the unknown, to place wonder alongside observation. It is precisely this tension, between fact and fantasy, between the evidence in the soil and the visions in the mind, that gives the garden its enduring power. Legends also evolved with political and social change, reflecting the ambitions, fears, and values of those who told them. Kings and rulers claimed gardens as extensions of their own power, narrating stories that intertwined earthly dominion with sacred mandate. Mystical orders and secret societies imbued these spaces with spiritual significance, suggesting that the garden's endurance was not merely botanical but moral, ethical, and cosmic. As empires rose and fell, the garden became a touchstone of continuity, a place that seemed to resist the erosions of time that consumed cities and kingdoms alike. In this way, the legend of the garden is inseparable from human history. It reflects our highest aspirations, our desire for permanence, and our fascination with spaces that exist both in reality and imagination. Through the lens of archaeology, these stories are often tantalizingly incomplete. Excavations reveal terraces, walls, and carefully arranged plants, yet the full design, the intent behind it, and the rituals performed there remain elusive. Ancient texts may describe gardens in vivid terms, but the correlation to physical spaces is rarely exact. Here the contrast between known and unknown sharpens. Fragments of fact hint at grandeur, while legend fills the gaps with wonder. The garden's persistent invisibility challenges not only our curiosity but also our assumptions, compelling us to embrace uncertainty and to marvel at the ingenuity of past civilizations in envisioning spaces that are simultaneously material and mythical. Even in the modern era, the garden's influence is felt. Writers, artists, and philosophers continue to draw upon these ancient stories, infusing contemporary thought with echoes of gardens that may never have fully existed. Each reinterpretation is a dialogue across centuries, a way of keeping the legend alive while exploring its meaning in changing contexts. Museums display artifacts and manuscripts, scholars publish analyses, yet the true garden, its essence, its eternal bloom, remains a matter of imagination, meditation, and quiet wonder. It is a place that exists in our collective memory as much as in any archaeological record, bridging history and legend in ways that are both comforting and endlessly mysterious. As this section closes, we are reminded that legends are not simply fanciful stories, they are vessels of cultural memory, repositories of human longing and creativity. The garden that never dies has survived precisely because it fulfills more than aesthetic or practical needs. It embodies hope, resilience, and the yearning for continuity. Through centuries of retelling, each culture, each generation adds its own brushstroke, contributing to a tapestry that is both intricate and elusive. And as we prepare to turn from stories to the material traces left behind, we carry with us an awareness of this delicate balance. The garden exists both in the soil beneath our feet and in the boundless landscapes of imagination, a bridge between what we know and what we yearn to understand. Beneath the layers of soil, amid scattered fragments of pottery and the faint outlines of ancient walls, archaeologists approach these spaces with patience, their hands and instruments delicate as they brush away centuries of dust, revealing stones that speak of lives long gone. Each shard, each carved block, is a fragment of a story, sometimes precise, sometimes enigmatic, that hints at the garden's presence and purpose. In these excavations, the boundary between history and legend becomes permeable. Evidence and imagination mingle, and the garden that never dies begins to emerge, not fully, but in glimpses that are enough to stir wonder and reflection. The garden's architectural traces are among the most compelling: terraces carved into hillsides, remnants of water channels that once irrigated lush plantings, and foundations that suggest pavilions or sacred enclosures, all speak to an intentional design. Scholars study these structures meticulously, mapping layouts, measuring stones, and reconstructing probable functions. Even in ruins, the precision of construction conveys a sense of order and reverence, implying that these spaces were more than utilitarian. They were created as sanctuaries, carefully cultivated, to evoke harmony between human ingenuity and the rhythms of nature. The stones themselves, worn by centuries of wind and rain, seem to echo with the hands that shaped them, connecting the present with a distant past. Yet for every solid discovery, there are tantalizing gaps. Sections of walls vanish without explanation, terraces appear incomplete, and traces of vegetation hint at gardens that once flourished, but now exist only in memory. This interplay of presence and absence is central to the garden's allure. The more that is uncovered, the more the imagination is invited to roam. Archaeologists themselves acknowledge the mystery, noting that interpretations are provisional, that each excavation raises as many questions as it answers. It is in this tension, between what is tangible and what remains hidden, that the garden's voice becomes most compelling, speaking quietly through fragments, shadows, and echoes of earth. Inscriptions and carvings further deepen the narrative. Stones etched with symbols, texts in fading scripts, and patterns carved into walls suggest ritual devotion and communication with forces beyond the visible world. Some inscriptions are straightforward, naming plants, rulers, or craftsmen. Others are enigmatic, referencing cosmic principles, spiritual ideals, or metaphors that defy easy translation. These marks serve as a bridge between the material and the immaterial, hinting at knowledge once held and perhaps still remembered in collective memory. By studying these symbols, scholars attempt to reconstruct the garden not just as a physical place, but as a repository of human thought, belief, and aspiration. Archaeological discoveries also reveal traces of daily life within or near the garden, tools for planting and harvesting, remnants of ceremonial offerings, and fragments of vessels used in feasts or rituals provide glimpses into the people who tended these spaces. The contrast between these mundane artifacts and the garden's lofty reputation is striking. It was at once a site of labor and devotion, a meeting place of human effort and spiritual longing. This duality reinforces the garden's enduring fascination. It is not merely a dream, nor simply a physical garden, but a layered reality where work, imagination, and ritual converge, each element echoing across centuries. The garden's secrets are also encoded in its hidden structures. Subterranean chambers, vaulted cellars, and concealed passageways hint at spaces reserved for sacred rites, private reflection, or storage of precious plants and artifacts. Modern techniques, ground-penetrating radar, soil analysis, and digital reconstruction allow researchers to explore these hidden realms without disturbing them. Each discovery brings a mixture of excitement and humility. We can trace the outlines, measure the volumes, and imagine the uses, yet we cannot fully inhabit these spaces as those who built them once did. The unseen presence of the garden persists, reminding us that history is both revealed and concealed, and that mystery often resides in what is deliberately hidden from view. Even the smallest details command attention: a stone smoothed by countless footsteps, the faint imprint of a garden bed, or the subtle alignment of walls with celestial patterns conveys intent and meaning. The garden's creators seem to have designed with both practicality and poetry in mind, blending human skill with reverence for the natural world. Observers often describe a sensation of being in dialogue with the past. The stones, though silent, speak through context, texture, and placement. Each measured step across a terrace or along a weathered path is an act of listening, attuning oneself to the whispers that survive across time. While much can be reconstructed, there are inevitable uncertainties. Archaeology, for all its rigor, encounters limits. Records are incomplete, organic material has decayed, and some structures may never be fully understood. Yet it is precisely this incompleteness that sustains fascination. The garden's story is a living dialogue between what we can uncover and what imagination must supply. By embracing both evidence and conjecture, the narrative becomes richer, inviting viewers to wander in the space between certainty and wonder. The stones do not reveal everything, but they invite us to contemplate, reflect, and imagine, transforming ruins into a kind of meditation on time, beauty, and continuity. Through the meticulous work of archaeologists, coupled with the poetic attention of storytellers, the garden emerges as a layered experience. Its stones are not inert relics, they are carriers of memory, intent, and artistry. Each fragment connects past caretakers with the present observer, creating a dialogue that spans centuries. As we trace walls, terraces, and inscriptions, we sense the rhythm of human life, the passage of seasons, and the enduring aspiration to craft a space of eternal vitality. The garden, through these stones, speaks across time, not with a loud proclamation, but with a quiet insistence that beauty, care, and imagination endure. In listening to these stones, one realizes that the garden that never dies is not solely a physical space. It is a confluence of human effort, reverent observation, and imaginative yearning. It is a space where soil, water, and stone intertwine with ritual, memory, and aspiration. Archaeology provides a lens to glimpse the tangible, yet it is the interplay with legend, poetry, and reflection that allows the garden to breathe fully in our minds. And so as we prepare to move from these material traces to the landscapes that cradled them, we carry with us the understanding that every stone, every fragment, and every shadow is a voice in the garden's enduring song, a melody that invites patience, curiosity, and quiet wonder. The garden that never dies is not confined to a single point on a map. It stretches across landscapes, both tangible and imagined, weaving through mountains, rivers, and valleys, as if the earth itself conspires to hide its secret. Scholars have tried to trace its paths, to overlay ancient texts with modern geography, yet the more they search, the more the garden eludes precise location. Peaks rise where legends say it should be, only to reveal terraces overgrown or ruins barely recognizable. Streams appear in texts as glimmering arteries of life, yet in reality they may twist differently, dry in some seasons, hidden beneath layers of silt. This tension between description and observation imbues the garden with a sense of magic. It is a landscape both familiar and unknowable, a place that exists in the mind as much as on the ground. The terrain itself seems to resist total understanding. Hills slope gently into valleys that catch light in unusual ways, shadows forming shapes that suggest hidden groves or secret alcoves. Archaeologists and explorers often pause in quiet reverence, sensing that the garden's design may have been guided not only by practicality, but by symbolic intention, aligning paths and watercourses with the movements of the sun or the cycles of the seasons. Maps, no matter how detailed, cannot capture this subtle interplay of form and meaning. The geography is as much emotional and philosophical as it is physical. To walk these landscapes is to feel the pulse of history beneath your feet, a rhythm that echoes the care and attention of those who once tended the garden. Even rivers, so vital to the sustenance of life, carry the garden's mystery. Some waterways, described in ancient texts as shimmering and abundant, may have shifted course over centuries, their traces buried beneath soil or hidden by modern development. Yet these changes do not erase the garden's presence, they enhance its allure. The very act of searching, of attempting to reconcile text with terrain, becomes a meditation on impermanence and continuity. Each contour and hidden pathway hints at secrets that may never be fully uncovered, reminding us that the garden's essence lies as much in what is concealed as in what is revealed. Paths through forests and groves are equally elusive. Archaeological surveys reveal remnants of trails, terraces, and stone steps that once guided visitors through the garden's heart. Overgrown with time, these pathways now offer glimpses of design and purpose, but stop short of complete revelation. Some researchers suggest that the placement of these trails followed symbolic or ritualistic patterns, guiding those who walked them through experiences intended to evoke reflection, awe, or even transcendence. Nature and human intention converge here, blending the practical with the poetic, the known with the unknowable. Maps and satellite imagery provide modern tools, yet they too capture only fragments of the garden. Aerial surveys may reveal terrace outlines, the traces of irrigation or shadowed depressions, hinting at ancient ponds or pavilions. But even the clearest image cannot convey the atmosphere, the quiet, the sense of movement and stillness that imbues the space with life. Geography, in the case of the garden, is as much an experience as it is a coordinate. It is a language of subtle cues, of light and shadow, of space carefully cultivated to feel eternal. In this section of our journey, we begin to understand that the garden is more than a collection of coordinates or a patch of earth. It is a space where physical form intersects with imagination, where rivers, hills, and valleys are not simply elements of terrain, but instruments in a symphony of mystery and meaning. The landscape is a storyteller, shaping perception, evoking memory, and leaving space for wonder. Even when the paths are overgrown or ruins crumble, the garden asserts itself through these whispers of geography, inviting careful observation, reflection, and a quiet curiosity that never demands immediate answers. As we move forward from these hidden paths and shifting landscapes, the garden's geography prepares us for the next layer of understanding, the symbolic, the artistic, the ways in which human culture has sought to give form to something both eternal and elusive. Geography is both foundation and bridge. It grounds us in reality while pointing toward the imagination, a silent guide leading us deeper into the mysteries of a garden that refuses to be fully known. The garden that never dies reveals itself not only through stones and soil, but through the delicate language of symbols woven into art, ritual, and architecture. Every path, every carefully pruned tree, and every patterned flower bed carries meaning beyond the immediate eye. Across centuries, civilizations have projected their ideals onto the garden, embedding in it visions of eternity, virtue, and the cycles of life. The motifs are varied, geometric patterns etched into terraces, spiraling designs in water channels, and floral symbols carved into stone, yet they converge on a single theme. The garden is a space of perpetual renewal, where earthly beauty mirrors cosmic order. To understand the garden, one must attune not only to its physical traces, but to the poetic resonance of these symbols, which speak of life that endures beyond decay. In Eastern philosophies, gardens were often conceived as miniature universes. Rocks represented mountains, ponds mirrored the heavens, and plants embodied the changing seasons. Each element was carefully chosen and positioned to reflect balance and harmony, creating a space that encouraged contemplation and spiritual reflection. The garden was more than a collection of flora. It was a living metaphor, a meditation in form and color, where every stone, every ripple of water, and every bloom conveyed principles that guided both the gardener and the visitor. Symbols became a bridge between human aspiration and natural law, embedding philosophical ideals into tangible spaces. Western traditions too embraced symbolic expression within gardens, often blending aesthetic pleasure with allegorical meaning. Sacred groves, orchard layouts, and labyrinthine paths hinted at moral and spiritual lessons. A tree might represent wisdom, a fountain the flow of life, a pavilion the shelter of divine grace. Even in utilitarian gardens, symbolic thinking could be traced. Plants with medicinal properties suggested healing, while certain flowers embodied virtues such as purity, fidelity, or resilience. In this way, the garden functioned as a subtle language, one that communicated across generations and cultures, offering both guidance and inspiration to those who understood its coded messages. Art and literature amplified the symbolic resonance of the garden. Manuscripts illustrated with intricate flora, carvings in temples and palaces, and poetry celebrating gardens as spaces of refuge and enlightenment extended the reach of these symbols beyond their immediate geography. Symbols carried memory, transmitting ideas long after the gardens themselves had changed or vanished. Artists and scribes acted as interpreters, translating the garden's language for new audiences, ensuring that the garden's essence persisted even when its physical form was impermanent. Through these cultural echoes, the garden's symbolism became as enduring as the stones and soil it inhabited, bridging temporal gaps and connecting imagination with reality. The choice of plants was itself laden with meaning. Certain species, prized for fragrance, color, or medicinal properties, were not selected merely for aesthetics, but for the symbolic qualities they embodied. A lotus might evoke purity, rising from mud, a cypress symbolize resilience and immortality, or a flowering almond suggest renewal and hope. These botanical symbols intertwined with ritual and daily life, transforming the garden into a living text, where each gesture of planting, pruning, and arranging contributed to a narrative of eternal growth and cyclic renewal. Scholars and gardeners alike interpret these choices as deliberate acts, expressions of both personal devotion and collective philosophy. Water, too, played a central role in symbolic expression. Fountains, streams, and reflecting pools mirrored the heavens, carried sound and movement through the garden, and created rhythm and flow that guided perception. In some traditions, water represented life's continual renewal, a reminder that even as seasons pass and civilizations fall, the essence of vitality endures. The interplay of water with stone, plant, and light created dynamic spaces where symbols were not static but alive, shifting subtly with weather, time, and the viewer's presence. In these interactions, the garden became a space of sensory meditation, where the eye, ear, and touch could apprehend both form and meaning. The garden's symbolism extended beyond the visible, entering the realm of ritual and experience. Ceremonies, festivals, and daily practices were often enacted with an awareness of these symbolic elements, transforming movement and action into a living language of connection and reflection. To walk a path, to pluck a flower, to trace a channel of water was to participate in the ongoing narrative of the garden, to engage in a dialogue that transcended spoken words. The human body, in these acts, became both instrument and observer, sensing the rhythms of growth, decay, and renewal that the garden encoded into its form. Contrasts are central to understanding the garden's symbols. Light and shadow, growth and decay, permanence and impermanence are all woven into its design. A shaded grove invites introspection, a sunlit terrace encourages openness. Blossoms emerge alongside withered leaves, reminding visitors that beauty and fragility coexist. Through such contrasts, the garden communicates complex truths. Life is transient yet enduring, visible yet hidden, comprehensible yet mysterious. The symbols are not mere decoration, they are a meditation, an invitation to dwell in the space between certainty and wonder. In exploring these symbols, one begins to see the garden not merely as a physical space, but as a living manuscript, a palimpsest, where layers of meaning accumulate over centuries. Each element, chosen with care, each design carved or planted, is a message from the past, offering insight into how civilizations understood harmony, mortality, and the eternal cycles of life. Even when physical traces erode, the symbolism persists, encoded in texts, in traditions, and in the subtle cues of human imagination. Thus, the garden's power lies not solely in its existence as a place of greenery and stone, but in its ability to communicate across time. Through symbols embedded in flora, architecture, art, and ritual, it offers guidance, reflection, and inspiration. The garden speaks of resilience, continuity, and beauty that transcends generations. It is a space where history and imagination intertwine, where the observer becomes a participant in a dialogue that stretches across centuries. And as we prepare to move from symbols into the intimate practices that once animated the garden, we carry forward an understanding that every bloom, every stone, every pattern, is part of a language, both subtle and profound, a language that invites quiet contemplation, reflection, and the slow appreciation of a garden that never dies. The garden that never dies was never a passive space. It thrived through the gentle but deliberate acts of ritual, through the footsteps and gestures of those who sought to honor its essence. In every culture that embraced the idea of eternal gardens, ceremonial practices, shaped not only the physical environment, but the very spirit of the place. Early archaeologists and historians, studying traces of altars, ceremonial pottery, and ritual pathways, have glimpsed the intimate relationship between human devotion and natural design. Here, labor became meditation, pruning became prayer, and each act of care was imbued with meaning far beyond mere horticulture. The garden lived through ritual, and in this living, it became both sacred and enigmatic, a space where the ordinary intertwined with the extraordinary. Rituals in the garden took many forms, each carefully attuned to its purpose. Some involved planting and tending specific species at precise times, aligning with celestial cycles and seasonal shifts. Others centered on water, with channels and fountains flowing in ceremonial patterns, their motion a reflection of cosmic rhythms and divine order. The movement of light through groves and terraces was observed and celebrated, with shadows and reflections integrated into daily acts of worship or contemplation. These rituals, now partially reconstructed through both archaeological evidence and historical texts, reveal an understanding that the garden was more than a physical entity. It was a living dialogue, a space in which the human and natural worlds met in delicate, purposeful harmony. Even the simplest gestures carried symbolic weight, offering a flower, placing a stone in a particular arrangement, or walking a path in a prescribed sequence, was an act of communication, a message to unseen forces, or an acknowledgement of the garden's enduring presence. Anthropologists suggest that such acts were ways to maintain equilibrium, to honor life and continuity, and to ensure that the garden's vitality persisted across seasons and generations. In this sense, the garden functioned both as a canvas and as a participant, responding to human intention while retaining its own mystery, existing at the intersection of action, reflection, and timelessness. Ceremonial spaces within the garden were meticulously designed. Small enclosures, perhaps intended for meditation or offerings, were positioned to capture sunlight at particular hours, or to frame distant vistas. These arrangements suggest a profound awareness of perspective, light, and the movement of the sun and stars. Pilgrims or caretakers entering these spaces would have been subtly guided, their senses attuned to the garden's rhythms, their attention drawn to specific blooms, stones, or water features. Even today, when walking through reconstructed terraces or studying excavation plans, one can sense the intentional choreography, the blending of physical movement and spiritual reflection, that made the garden a space of living ritual. Music and sound were also part of the garden's ceremonial fabric. Water trickling through channels, the rustle of leaves in gentle breezes, and perhaps even percussive instruments, or chanting, would have punctuated rituals, adding rhythm and resonance to human presence. Archaeological finds, such as small bells, flutes, or percussion instruments, suggest that sound was carefully integrated, complementing visual and spatial design. These auditory elements transformed the garden into a multi-sensory environment, one where each gesture, each breath, each movement became part of a larger symphony of devotion and observation. The garden's rituals were not only communal, but often deeply personal. Individuals might engage in quiet acts of reflection, tracing patterns in soil, arranging flowers, or simply walking its paths to align their inner state with the external harmony. In these intimate moments, the garden served as both teacher and companion, a space where the human mind could wander freely, yet always within the structure and order of cultivated beauty. Such practices remind us that the garden's endurance is tied not only to its physical design, but to the human attention and care that perpetuated it, weaving devotion and mindfulness into its very foundation. Contrast once again plays a central role. Light and shadow, fullness and emptiness, growth and decay, all were integrated into rituals, emphasizing the cycles that define life and the universe. Seasonal changes dictated timing. Flowers bloomed and withered, waters rose and receded, and caretakers adjusted their ceremonies accordingly. These contrasts heightened awareness, reminding participants that the garden was not static but alive, a place where permanence and impermanence coexist. By observing and participating in these rituals, humans aligned themselves with natural rhythms, deepening the symbolic resonance of every act. Through the interplay of action, sound, movement, and space, the garden's rituals became a living narrative, passed down across generations. Archaeological traces, though fragmentary, provide glimpses into these practices, hinting at sequences of activity, areas of focus, and objects imbued with ceremonial purpose. Yet even with these reconstructions, much remains unknown. The precise words spoken, the songs sung, the intentions behind particular gestures, all are lost to time. And yet it is precisely this incompleteness that sustains wonder. The rituals are echoed in our imagination, bridging centuries of human care and attention, allowing the garden to live beyond the reach of decay. As we leave the intimate practices behind, the echoes of ritual guide us toward understanding the social and political dimensions of the garden. The ceremonies, careful designs, and sacred acts were often intertwined with authority, power, and stewardship, connecting spiritual devotion with the structures of society. Kings, rulers, and guardians assumed responsibility for the garden not only as a physical domain, but as a space of symbolic legitimacy. The lessons embedded in ritual practice thus extend outward, linking the individual's experience with collective memory, cultural identity, and historical continuity. In this way, the garden that never dies persists not only as an idea or a physical location, but as a space animated by human devotion, awareness, and reflection. Its rituals, though partially obscured by time, continue to resonate, reminding us that the garden's true essence is inseparable from the people who cared for it. Through these echoes, we begin to perceive the garden as both sacred and lived, a space where the ordinary gestures of tending, observing, and reflecting are transformed into acts of eternal significance. And as we move forward into the historical narratives of kingdoms and keepers, these rituals provide the foundation, the rhythm, and the silent wisdom that underpin the garden's enduring mystery. The garden that never dies was seldom left to chance. It flourished under the watchful eyes of kingdoms, rulers, and dedicated keepers, who understood that its endurance depended on both care and stewardship. Across time, the custodianship of such gardens became a mark of authority, a reflection of power, wisdom, and moral responsibility. Kings and queens, nobles and high priests, all recognized that a garden of eternal life was more than a pleasure ground. It was a symbol of order, continuity, and cosmic alignment. Through careful oversight, they preserved spaces where architecture, nature, and ritual intertwined, ensuring that the garden remained a living testament to human vision and devotion. Historical records reveal a spectrum of royal patronage. In some empires, the garden was integrated into palace complexes, its terraces, fountains, and groves forming extensions of royal authority. Chronicles describe carefully choreographed processions, ceremonial plantings, and seasonal celebrations, all designed to reflect the ruler's role as guardian, not only of territory, but of life itself. In other regions, kings commissioned elaborate waterworks, stone terraces, and pavilions, aligning gardens with celestial movements or sacred geography. Such investments were not purely aesthetic. They communicated messages of stability, abundance, and divine favor, embedding the garden into the political and cultural fabric of society. Beyond rulers, a dedicated class of keepers ensured that the garden thrived through daily attention. These individuals were skilled in horticulture, irrigation, and ritual practice, combining practical expertise with spiritual awareness. Their work required patience, knowledge, and devotion, for even the smallest lapse could disrupt the delicate balance of plants, water, and soil. Archaeological evidence, from irrigation channels and terraced fields to botanical remnants, speaks to their meticulous care. Each pathway, each flowering bed, each carefully pruned tree, is a testament to generations of caretakers, whose labor allowed the garden to persist beyond the lifespans of kings, empires, and ordinary citizens alike. The relationship between rulers and keepers was complex, interwoven with trust, responsibility, and reverence. Monarchs depended on their custodians, not only to maintain beauty, but to preserve ritual and symbolic meaning. Instructions for planting, ceremonial timing, and spatial arrangement were carefully recorded, sometimes in texts, sometimes orally, passed down like sacred knowledge. In this way, the garden became a repository of both material and cultural memory, a space where human intention and natural growth converged, guided by hands and minds devoted to its preservation. Conflicts and politics, however, inevitably left their mark. Wars, invasions, and shifting alliances could threaten the garden, as they did with many ancient sites. Inscriptions, fragmented records, and partial reconstructions hint at episodes of neglect, reconstruction, and adaptation. Some gardens were moved, reshaped, or rebuilt entirely, yet the core vision endured, carried forward by committed custodians. Even when empires fell, the idea of the garden persisted, inspiring subsequent rulers and communities to revive, emulate, or reinterpret its essence. It is this resilience, the ability to survive disruption while retaining symbolic and practical integrity, that gives the garden its enduring mystique. Interestingly, some keepers were more than gardeners; they were scholars, philosophers, and spiritual guides, interpreting the garden's meaning while tending its physical form. They observed patterns of plant growth, cycles of water, and celestial alignments, seeking correspondence between earthly and cosmic order. Ritual and practical care were inseparable, each enhancing the other. In some traditions, keepers were entrusted with secret knowledge of planting techniques, hidden chambers, or sacred rites, creating a lineage of guardians whose wisdom transcended ordinary horticulture. The garden in their hands became a living laboratory of life, growth, and human aspiration. In the interplay of kingdoms and keepers, contrasts emerge as a defining feature: power and humility, permanence and fragility, authority and care, all coexist within the garden's framework. Monarchs exerted control, yet they relied on the humility and attentiveness of keepers. Structures of stone and wood offered permanence, yet living plants and flowing water remained impermanent, requiring constant vigilance. Authority shaped space, but devotion sustained it. These contrasts echo the garden's broader mystery. It is a place where human intention and natural cycles intersect, where continuity is achieved, not by domination, but by thoughtful stewardship and attentive presence. Economic and logistical factors also played a significant role in sustaining the garden. Irrigation systems required maintenance, rare plants had to be sourced from distant regions, and labor had to be coordinated with seasonal cycles. Textual records suggest elaborate networks of supply and labor management, indicating that the garden was not only a spiritual or aesthetic project, but a complex institution. These systems reveal a remarkable integration of practicality and philosophy, showing that the garden's survival relied equally on human ingenuity and reverence for life. Archaeologists today trace remnants of these networks, finding clues in terraced waterways, storage vessels, and soil composition, revealing the careful planning that allowed beauty to endure across centuries. The legacy of kingdoms and keepers continues to shape the garden's perception today. Even when ruins remain, the careful alignment of terraces, water channels, and plantings reflect centuries of accumulated knowledge and intention. Visitors, historians, and archaeologists experience the echoes of past stewardship, sensing the rhythm of hands that planted, pruned, and guided life through space. These echoes remind us that the garden's endurance is not accidental, it is the product of vision, devotion, and careful management, a dynamic interplay between human ambition and natural resilience. Ultimately, understanding the garden through the lens of kingdoms and keepers illuminates its dual character. It is simultaneously a political symbol and a sacred space, a site of labor and contemplation, a canvas for authority and devotion. The balance achieved by these custodians ensured that the garden could transcend individual lifetimes and imperial rise and fall, persisting as both a material and cultural phenomenon. As we prepare to explore the tales of those who dared to venture beyond the garden's boundaries, to seek its hidden paths and lost treasures, the role of kingdoms and keepers remains a vital foundation. Their vision, care, and resilience are woven into every stone, every stream, every tree, a testament to human dedication that allows the garden to endure as both legend and reality. Even in the most meticulously maintained gardens, there are corners that defy control, hidden pathways, veiled by overgrown foliage, staircases, swallowed by time, and alcoves that have escaped the notice of generations. The garden that never dies, despite centuries of stewardship, harbors such spaces, secret channels where history and legend entwine. These hidden pathways are more than mere physical features. They are conduits of mystery, whispering stories of exploration, curiosity, and the human desire to uncover what lies beyond the ordinary. Archaeologists and historians often stumble upon them unexpectedly, revealing evidence of detours, forgotten terraces, and concealed chambers, each offering tantalizing glimpses of lives long past and secrets yet untold. Ancient maps, when deciphered, hint at labyrinthine designs that were intended to guide, or even mislead. Certain corridors may have led to sacred spaces, private groves, or water reservoirs hidden from public view. Others might have been deliberately constructed as playful mazes, a means to test the visitor's attentiveness or patience. Inscriptions, carvings, and stone markers occasionally signal their presence, yet the passage of centuries has left many traces faint, incomplete, or ambiguous. Modern explorers and archaeologists must rely on careful observation, measurement, and sometimes conjecture, piecing together the intentions of those who designed these pathways. Every discovery, no matter how small, enriches our understanding of the garden's complexity, revealing a world where practical necessity, aesthetic pleasure, and symbolic intent converge. Hidden chambers within the garden further deepen its aura of mystery. Some served practical purposes, storage of seeds, tools, or water. Others appear to have been used for ritual or meditation, spaces where silence and seclusion enhance spiritual practice. Archaeological finds suggest that these chambers were carefully concealed, their entrances sometimes obscured by vegetation or architectural features. The act of discovering them today evokes the same sense of awe and anticipation that ancient visitors might have felt when stepping into these secret spaces for the first time. In these chambers, the garden's dual identity, practical and mystical, becomes most apparent, illustrating the careful balance between accessibility and concealment, visibility and mystery. Lost treasures, both tangible and symbolic, have long been associated with the garden. Ancient texts, oral traditions, and historical chronicles speak of rare plants, exquisite artifacts, and ceremonial objects hidden within the depths of its groves. Some treasures were botanical, flowers or herbs, with unique medicinal or symbolic properties, carefully cultivated and guarded. Others were crafted, gilded vessels, finely carved stones, or ceremonial implements designed for rituals and celebrations. These treasures, real or imagined, captured the imagination of visitors and rulers alike, drawing pilgrims, scholars, and adventurers to seek their secrets. In doing so, they contributed to the garden's enduring reputation as a place of wonder, where even the most diligent observer might stumble upon the unexpected. Exploration of these hidden pathways and treasures was not without risk. Overgrown trails could conceal treacherous drops, unstable terraces, or water channels whose depths were unknown. Ancient caretakers may have intentionally restricted access to certain areas, preserving the sanctity of secret chambers or protecting delicate plants. The interplay of curiosity and caution shaped the experience of the garden, reinforcing its reputation as a space that rewarded attentiveness and respect. Modern archaeology mirrors this dynamic. Every excavation, survey, or mapping effort must balance discovery with preservation, honoring the garden's delicate equilibrium, while uncovering its stories. Natural forces have also contributed to the garden's hidden nature. Erosion, shifting soil, seasonal floods, and encroaching vegetation have reshaped terraces, pathways, and watercourses over centuries. What was once a visible trail may now be obscured by layers of earth, while water channels, rerouted by environmental changes, leave only subtle traces. These transformations create a layered history, where the present landscape overlays previous designs, challenging observers to disentangle the garden's evolution. In this interplay of nature and human intention, the hidden pathways acquire an almost sentient quality, inviting exploration while preserving their secrets. The garden's secret spaces often reveal insights into its cultural and symbolic dimensions. Hidden groves might have been spaces for reflection or meditation, secluded areas where the senses could engage with the subtleties of scent, sound, and light. Concealed terraces or chambers may have been designed to heighten anticipation, creating a journey through contrasts, darkness and light, concealment and revelation, stillness and movement. These spaces communicate that mystery was not an accident, but an integral part of design, encouraging visitors to slow down, observe carefully, and engage with both material and symbolic dimensions. Oral traditions amplify the allure of these hidden elements. Tales of explorers discovering lost chambers, uncovering rare plants, or following secret watercourses resonate across generations, inspiring both scholarly inquiry and imaginative storytelling. The garden becomes a stage for adventure, where curiosity is rewarded and patience is essential. Legends of hidden treasures, secret groves, and concealed paths enhance the sense of suspense, transforming the garden into a living narrative that merges tangible history with the human desire for discovery. Even modern technology, with ground-penetrating radar, drones and digital modeling, reveals only fragments of these secret spaces. Each new discovery prompts more questions than answers, reinforcing the garden's mystique. Archaeologists can identify terraces, waterworks, and potential chambers, yet the full experience, the sense of wonder, anticipation, and the unfolding of hidden beauty, remains beyond reach. This tension between knowledge and mystery is central to the garden's appeal. It is not merely what is found, but what remains elusive, that sustains fascination and invites reflection. Ultimately, the hidden pathways and lost treasures remind us that the garden is both physical and conceptual. It is a space where human ingenuity, devotion, and curiosity intersect with natural processes and the passage of time. Each hidden trail or chamber, each fragment of treasure, becomes a testament to human engagement with the mysterious and the eternal. In seeking what is concealed, we participate in a centuries-old dialogue, walking alongside generations of caretakers, rulers, and dreamers, who understood that the garden's true value lay not only in what was visible, but in the journey of discovery itself. As we prepare to shift focus from these hidden elements to the stories told by those who chronicled, painted, and imagined the garden, the lessons of pathways and treasures remain vivid. Mystery, patience, and attentive observation are not merely tools for exploration, they are integral to understanding the garden itself. The garden that never dies is alive not only in its visible forms, but in its hidden recesses, inviting every visitor, scholar, and dreamer to engage with its layered beauty, to sense its enduring spirit, and to appreciate the delicate balance between revelation and concealment. The garden that never dies speaks not only through stones, soil, and hidden pathways, but also through voices that echo across time. These are the voices of those who walked its terraces, tended its blooms, and performed its rituals, keepers, visitors, and chroniclers, whose observations and reflections have survived in texts, inscriptions, and oral traditions. Though centuries separate us from them, their words and traces convey insight into the garden's enduring mystery. They offer a bridge between the tangible and the imagined, between what was seen and what was felt, and through their narratives, the garden continues to live in memory as vividly as it did in life. Historical chronicles, carefully preserved, provide glimpses into the garden's social and spiritual dimensions. Scholars, poets, and travelers wrote of its terraces and groves, describing both beauty and symbolism. Some accounts focus on sensory experience, the fragrance of flowers after rainfall, the gentle murmur of water through channels, or the rustle of leaves stirred by evening wind. Others emphasize the garden's moral and philosophical significance, noting how its design embodied harmony, balance, and order, reflecting ideals that guided both rulers and ordinary visitors. Even in fragments, these narratives convey a sense of reverence and awe, inviting modern readers to inhabit the garden imaginatively, to feel its spaces as those who chronicled it once did. Oral traditions carry another layer of the garden's voice. Stories passed down through generations capture encounters with hidden paths, secret groves, or legendary blooms. Tales of explorers finding concealed chambers or rare plants imbue the garden with suspense and wonder, suggesting that its mysteries were always intertwined with human curiosity and imagination. These narratives, though sometimes embellished, preserve the garden's essence, emphasizing themes of patience, attentiveness, and the rewards of mindful observation. They reveal a cultural understanding that the garden was more than a physical place. It was a living narrative, shaped by human engagement, as much as by soil, stone, and water. Inscriptions and carved texts, embedded within the garden, offer further insight. Symbols, prayers, and dedications etched into stone walls or terraced paths reflect both devotion and historical context. Some inscriptions commemorate rulers, patrons, or notable caretakers, linking personal memory with the garden's broader story. Others encode spiritual or philosophical guidance, providing a quiet meditation for those who pause to read and reflect. In these carved words, the past speaks directly to the present, reminding us that human presence, though fleeting, is capable of leaving enduring traces, particularly when aligned with the rhythms and intentions of the natural world. Letters, diaries, and travel accounts from historical visitors contribute additional layers. Observers recorded their impressions with care, often noting the interplay of light, shadow, and perspective, as well as the sensations evoked by water, fragrance, and texture. These first-hand accounts reveal the garden as a multi-sensory experience, where perception and imagination converge. Even when measurements or layouts were included, they were often secondary to the writer's contemplation of beauty, harmony, and timelessness. Such records reinforce the idea that the garden was both observed and internalized, a place where external forms shaped inner reflection. Voices from the past also emphasize the garden's moral and ethical significance. In many accounts, tending, walking, or engaging with the garden was presented as a practice in patience, attentiveness, and stewardship. Visitors were invited to observe the cycles of growth and decay, to recognize impermanence, and to appreciate the subtle interconnections between life, earth, and sky. By documenting these observations, chroniclers imparted lessons that transcended the material garden, reminding future generations that engagement with beauty and mystery cultivates understanding, empathy, and mindfulness. Art and illustration, too, act as voices from the past. Sketches of terraces, paintings of groves, and illuminated manuscripts depicting ceremonial use provide visual testimony, complementing written and oral records. They capture not only form, but mood, light, and atmosphere, offering a sensory dimension that words alone cannot convey. These artistic interpretations reveal what people valued, how they experienced the garden, and what they wished to preserve for posterity. Through them, the garden's vitality continues to resonate, bridging centuries of human observation and imagination. The garden's voices are not uniform. They speak in contrasts and multiplicity. Some recount grandeur and meticulous order, while others recall hidden corners and secret paths. Some emphasize sensory delight, while others focus on ritual, philosophy, or moral instruction. Together, these voices weave a tapestry of experience that is richer than any single perspective. They reflect a shared recognition that the garden's essence is not fully graspable, that mystery persists alongside understanding, and that engagement requires both attention and imagination. Listening to these voices, we begin to perceive the garden as a living archive. It preserves memory, emotion, and wisdom as much as stone, water, or plant life. Every account, inscription, and illustration adds depth, allowing contemporary observers to reconstruct not just the garden's physicality, but its experiential and symbolic dimensions. These voices remind us that the garden's endurance is intertwined with human perception and narrative, and that history itself becomes a medium through which mystery persists. As we prepare to move from the garden's historical voices to the modern rediscovery and archaeological study of its remnants, the past guides us. The chroniclers, caretakers, and storytellers offer context, insight, and inspiration, reminding us that the garden's mysteries are not only to be unearthed, but to be felt, contemplated, and imagined. Their echoes encourage patience, reflection, and attentiveness, qualities that continue to shape how we engage with the garden today. Through their words and images, the garden that never dies continues to speak, bridging centuries and inviting each new generation to listen carefully, wander quietly, and enter into a dialogue that transcends time itself. The garden that never dies occupies a liminal space between reality and imagination, a place where archaeology and legend converge. For centuries, scholars, explorers, and storytellers have attempted to map, excavate, and understand it, only to discover that each new revelation raises further questions. Archaeological surveys reveal terraces, irrigation channels, stone foundations, and botanical remnants, tangible traces of a carefully cultivated landscape. Yet legends persist alongside these findings, tales of eternal blooms, hidden groves, and sacred fountains, whose waters confer longevity or insight. In this tension between measurable evidence and enduring myth, the garden retains its enigmatic allure, reminding us that not all knowledge is reducible to observation alone. Excavations across various sites suggest that the garden's designers were both practical and symbolic in their approach. Stone terraces indicate careful water management, ensuring plants thrived even in challenging climates. Channels, dams, and reservoirs hint at sophisticated engineering, demonstrating that those who created the garden possessed advanced understanding of hydrology and soil preservation. Yet the physical structures only partially convey the garden's full significance. Legends of secret groves, sacred pavilions, and rare blooms persist because the garden's power lies not only in utility, but in the imagination, in the stories passed down by generations of caretakers and chroniclers. Legends often describe the garden as a space untouched by time, a place where flowers bloom perpetually, waters remain clear and abundant, and tranquility reigns eternal. These accounts, while mythic, influence archaeological interpretation. Scholars must navigate carefully, distinguishing between evidence of human activity and narrative embellishment. However, the interplay between legend and archaeology is not merely problematic, it is illuminating. Myths preserve fragments of knowledge, hinting at locations, features, or practices that might otherwise be lost to decay. By listening to the stories alongside the soil, archaeologists gain insight into the intentions, values, and imagination of those who created and sustained the garden. Certain legendary elements have inspired physical searches, tales of hidden chambers, rare plants with mystical properties, or secret water conduits have guided excavators to overlooked terraces or concealed alcoves. While not all legends translate into tangible discovery, some have led to remarkable finds, remnants of structures corresponding to textual descriptions, seeds of now rare species, or evidence of ceremonial features once thought imaginary. These intersections between story and archaeology illustrate the garden's layered reality. What is described in narrative may guide practical discovery, and what is unearthed may in turn reinforce or reshape legend. Archaeological methods themselves have evolved to engage with the garden's complexities. Ground-penetrating radar, aerial imaging, and soil analysis allow researchers to detect structures and planting patterns invisible to the naked eye. Botanical studies identify plant species and ecological conditions that align with historical accounts. Even partial discoveries, like the outline of a terrace or a fragment of a water channel, contribute to a reconstruction of the garden's original design and intention. Each find is interpreted not only through empirical analysis, but also in dialogue with the symbolic and legendary narratives, creating a holistic approach that honors both fact and imagination. Legends, in many ways, function as a form of early documentation. Oral histories and literary texts often encode information about spatial layouts, ceremonial practices, and ecological knowledge. While embellished, these accounts contain kernels of truth that guide modern exploration. For instance, a story of a grove where the flowers never fade might correspond to the cultivation of hardy perennial species, or an area of microclimate particularly suited to plant longevity. Similarly, references to hidden fountains of clarity could reflect ingeniously designed water channels or reservoirs integral to the garden's irrigation system. By interpreting legend alongside physical evidence, researchers can uncover the garden's design logic, technological sophistication, and cultural significance. The dialogue between archaeology and legend also highlights the garden's temporal depth. Each layer of soil, each collapsed terrace, and each fragment of pottery speaks to centuries of human engagement, yet the stories surrounding the garden often transcend historical events, imbuing it with a timeless quality. Legends reinforce this perception of eternity, suggesting that the garden exists both in physical reality and in collective memory. Archaeologists, aware of these narratives, approach their work not as mere excavation, but as participation in a centuries-long continuum of inquiry, imagination, and reverence. This convergence of myth and evidence shapes how the garden is understood and experienced today. Visitors and researchers alike find themselves suspended between two worlds, the measurable, material traces of past labor and the intangible, poetic vision preserved in stories. Walking along reconstructed terraces, observing carefully preserved water channels, or examining remnants of ceremonial spaces, one senses the dialogue between what was, what is, and what might have been imagined. The garden, in this sense, becomes a mirror, reflecting both human ingenuity and human longing, the desire to create beauty, preserve life, and engage with the mysteries of time and nature. Even the smallest archaeological discoveries gain significance when viewed through the lens of legend. A simple stone marker may align with a story of secret pathways, a trace of irrigation may correspond to accounts of sacred fountains, a surviving plant species may echo tales of eternal bloom. In each case, the interplay of tangible evidence and mythic imagination deepens appreciation for the garden's complexity and endurance. The two are inseparable. Archaeology provides a framework of reality, while legend supplies the narrative and emotional resonance that allow the garden to live vividly in the human imagination. Ultimately, the garden that never dies exists in a dual reality. It is tangible, with terraces, waterworks, and remnants that can be measured, analyzed, and mapped. Yet it is also mythic, alive in stories, memory, and imagination. The convergence of archaeology and legend is what sustains its timelessness, revealing a place where human vision, devotion, and storytelling coalesce. In exploring the garden, we participate in both a scientific and a poetic endeavor, uncovering layers of meaning that span centuries, cultures, and disciplines. As we move from the intersection of legend and archaeology to the garden's botanical and ecological secrets, this duality between what is seen and what is imagined remains central. Every plant, stone, and watercourse carries traces of human intention and mythic imagination, a reminder that the garden's endurance relies equally on earth and story, on careful observation and reverent wonder. The garden continues to exist, not only as a historical artifact, but as a living dialogue between fact and imagination, awaiting each new generation of explorers, dreamers, and listeners to engage with its eternal mysteries. The garden that never dies is as much a story of plants as it is of stone and water. Within its carefully designed terraces and hidden groves lie botanical secrets that speak to the ingenuity, observation, and devotion of its caretakers. Every species was chosen, planted, and tended with purpose, their placement guided by aesthetic vision, spiritual symbolism, or practical utility. Some plants were cultivated for their beauty, others for fragrance, medicine, or seasonal significance. In studying these species, botanists and historians uncover patterns that reveal not only horticultural skill, but a profound understanding of ecological balance and human interaction with nature. Among the most remarkable features of the garden are its perennial and exotic species. Certain plants, resilient and long-lived, became emblematic of the garden's promise of continuity and endurance. Ancient texts describe blooms that appear in unexpected seasons, waters nourished to sustain delicate flora, and the cultivation of species sourced from distant lands. Archaeobotanical studies reveal traces of rare seeds and pollen, indicating that the garden's designers experimented with hybridization, selective cultivation, and microclimatic manipulation. These botanical strategies reflect a sophisticated awareness of environmental dynamics, ensuring that the garden could thrive across decades, even centuries. Fragrance played a central role in the garden's experience. Aromatic herbs, flowers, and trees were strategically positioned to guide visitors along paths or mark ceremonial spaces. Lavender, jasmine, and rose, among others, were not merely decorative, their scents acted as natural markers, sensory cues that enhanced ritual and contemplation. The careful orchestration of smell, alongside visual beauty and the sound of flowing water, created an immersive environment. Walking through the garden, one's senses would be enveloped, guided subtly by the botanical choices of generations of caretakers, each plant chosen for its ability to harmonize with its surroundings and with human perception. Medicinal and symbolic uses of plants further enrich the garden's significance. Textual and archaeological evidence suggest that some species were employed in rituals of healing, purification, or longevity. Others carried metaphorical weight, evergreens symbolizing endurance, flowering trees representing renewal, and vines that intertwined pathways, reflecting connection and continuity. In this way, the garden functioned as both a practical repository of botanical knowledge and a living narrative of human values, culture, and aspiration. Each plant becomes a storyteller, its growth patterns, fragrance, and bloom cycles, conveying lessons about life, care, and temporality. Seasonal cycles were carefully observed, influencing planting patterns and ceremonial timing. Flowers and trees were selected to bloom in staggered sequences, ensuring color, fragrance, and vitality throughout the year. Water channels and terraces were designed to sustain growth even in dry seasons, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of irrigation and soil conservation. In some cases, microclimates were intentionally created. Shaded alcoves, terraced slopes, and wind-protected niches allowed sensitive species to flourish. The garden in this sense was both a canvas and a laboratory where human ingenuity guided nature to achieve continuity and beauty. The interplay of native and exotic species highlights the garden's role as a hub of botanical experimentation and exchange. Plants from distant regions were introduced, adapted, and cultivated alongside local species, creating a rich tapestry of life that delighted the senses while reinforcing ecological knowledge. These introductions reflect trade networks, cultural connections, and the curiosity of caretakers who sought to expand the garden's diversity. Each successful integration of an exotic species was a small triumph, demonstrating both horticultural skill and a vision that extended beyond the local landscape, embracing global awareness and experimentation. Hidden groves and alcoves often contain specialized plantings, carefully selected for fragrance, rarity, or ritual significance. Archaeobotanical studies and historical accounts suggest that certain spaces were reserved for sacred or ceremonial species, cultivated under strict observation. The placement and arrangement of these plants was deliberate, designed to influence perception, evoke emotion, or guide ritual action. By understanding these botanical secrets, modern researchers gain insight not only into horticultural techniques, but into the symbolic and experiential design of the garden. The garden's longevity owes much to careful attention to soil, water, and ecological balance. Techniques for enriching soil, managing water flow, and protecting against pests reveal a deep knowledge of plant physiology and environmental systems. Terraces, channels, and raised beds demonstrate a sophisticated integration of engineering and horticulture, ensuring both beauty and sustainability. This attention to detail underscores the garden's dual character, a space of aesthetic delight and practical ingenuity, where each botanical choice served multiple purposes, blending art, science, and spirituality. Even today, botanical secrets continue to inspire curiosity and discovery. Seeds preserved in soil strata, pollen recovered from sediment layers, and resilient plant species surviving on terraces offer evidence of ancient horticultural practices. Modern botanical studies, guided by both archaeology and historical texts, reconstruct these patterns, revealing a garden whose vitality was sustained by careful observation, experimentation, and reverence. Every plant, every flower, every tree embodies the cumulative knowledge and care of generations, a living testament to the garden's enduring spirit. Ultimately, the garden's botanical secrets remind us that human vision, care, and imagination are inseparable from the natural world. The garden that never dies thrives not only through water and stone, but through thoughtful selection, attentive cultivation, and deep understanding of ecological cycles. In exploring these living treasures, we encounter a dialogue between past and present, between science and imagination, between observation and wonder. The garden remains a testament to the possibility of harmony, continuity, and mystery, embodied in every leaf, petal, and root. As we transition from botanical mastery to the spiritual and mystical significance of the garden, the lessons embedded in its plants, cycles, and hidden groves illuminate not just how the garden was created, but why it mattered. Its secrets, both ecological and symbolic, prepare us to enter a realm where belief, legend, and human experience merge, guiding us toward reflection, awe, and a deeper understanding of the garden that never dies. The garden that never dies is more than a physical space of terraces, water channels, and botanical ingenuity. It is a realm where the tangible and intangible merge, where the sacred and the mundane coexist in delicate balance. Across centuries, visitors, rulers, and caretakers have experienced it not only with their eyes and hands, but with their hearts and minds, sensing an ineffable quality that transcends ordinary perception. Spiritual and mystical significance permeates the garden, inviting contemplation, reflection, and a subtle communion with forces beyond human comprehension. Here, the act of walking, observing, and tending becomes a ritual, a meditation on time, life, and the enduring mysteries of nature. Many traditions associated with the garden link its design to cosmic order. Terraces align with celestial movements, watercourses reflect cycles of the moon and sun, and certain plants were chosen for their symbolic resonance with spiritual principles. Sacred geometries, encoded in pathways and groves, guide visitors subtly, encouraging awareness of proportion, symmetry, and harmony. These arrangements are not merely aesthetic, they communicate a vision of balance between the earthly and the divine, between human intention and natural law. By moving through the garden, one participates in this interplay, experiencing an awareness that combines beauty, order, and a sense of transcendence. Legends enhance the garden's mystical aura, stories of hidden fountains that grant insight, groves where the air itself carries whispers of wisdom, and flowers that bloom perpetually infuse the space with a sense of wonder and reverence. Such accounts, whether literal or metaphorical, underscore the garden's role as a place of reflection, contemplation, and spiritual engagement. They suggest that the garden's creators intended more than visual or sensory pleasure. They sought to craft an environment capable of shaping consciousness, nurturing mindfulness, and fostering an awareness of life's cycles and mysteries. Ritual use of the garden reinforces this sacred dimension. Historical records indicate ceremonies, offerings, and seasonal observances designed to honor life, nature, and divine principles. Certain areas were reserved for meditation, reflection, or prayer, often hidden from general view, emphasizing seclusion and focus. Participants were guided by the interplay of light, water, and plant life, experiencing the garden as a living mandala, where human presence, natural beauty, and spiritual intention intersected. These practices highlight that the garden's mystical significance was not abstract. It was lived, felt, and enacted in concrete, embodied ways. The sensory environment of the garden contributes directly to its spiritual impact. The fragrance of flowers, the gentle murmur of water, the rustle of leaves in the evening wind, and the play of light and shadow across terraces create a layered, immersive experience. Each element is orchestrated to engage the senses, heighten awareness, and induce a state of contemplative stillness. Movement through the garden becomes a meditative practice. Attention to detail, mindfulness of surroundings, and quiet observation cultivate a subtle connection between visitor and environment, blurring the boundaries between observer and space. Plants themselves carry symbolic and mystical weight. Evergreens signify endurance, flowering trees reflect cycles of renewal, and intertwined vines embody connection and continuity. Herbs and flowers, used in ritual or medicinal practice, enhance spiritual and symbolic resonance. In choosing and cultivating these species, the garden's caretakers demonstrated an understanding that life, growth, and decay carry meaning beyond utility. Each botanical choice reinforces the sense that the garden is not merely a collection of flora, but a living narrative, a medium for reflection on existence, time, and human engagement with the sacred. Hidden paths and secluded alcoves play a crucial role in mystical experience. By guiding visitors through spaces of partial concealment and revelation, the garden encourages exploration, patience, and attentiveness. Light filtering through foliage, the sound of water from distant channels, and glimpses of rare blooms reward careful observation, creating a subtle interplay of anticipation, discovery, and quiet delight. This orchestration of space and perception cultivates a heightened awareness, allowing visitors to encounter both external beauty and inner contemplation. The garden, in this sense, functions as a living meditation, an environment where mystery, reflection, and sensory engagement converge. Legends of longevity and eternal bloom reinforce the garden's spiritual ethos. Stories of flowers that endure seasons, fountains that preserve life, or groves that inspire wisdom serve as metaphors for human aspiration, resilience, and the pursuit of understanding. These narratives transform botanical and architectural features into symbols, connecting tangible elements to intangible ideals. Visitors and caretakers internalize these stories, experiencing the garden not merely as a physical space, but as a reflection of moral, spiritual, and philosophical values, fostering a deep, enduring sense of awe and reverence. Historical texts describe how rulers, scholars, and spiritual guides used the garden as a site for reflection and contemplation. Meetings, teachings, and meditative walks were conducted in ways that reinforced alignment with natural and cosmic rhythms. The garden's physical features, terraces, groves, water channels, interacted with symbolic narratives, to create a structured yet flexible space for spiritual engagement. In doing so, the garden became both a personal and communal locus of contemplation, accommodating quiet introspection, as well as ceremonial observance, bridging individual experience and collective tradition. Ultimately, the garden's spiritual and mystical significance rests on the integration of multiple layers: physical design, botanical arrangement, sensory orchestration, ritual use and narrative tradition. These elements converge to create an environment where human natural and symbolic forces interact, fostering insight, reflection, and a subtle connection to the eternal. Visitors are invited to move slowly, observe carefully, and engage both senses and imagination, experiencing the garden not merely as a historical site, but as a living, breathing medium for contemplation, memory, and wonder. As we move from spiritual contemplation to examining the garden's role in cultural memory and myth, the lessons of sacred design, symbolic planting, and ritual engagement illuminate its enduring influence. The garden's mystical essence, rooted in careful observation, imaginative storytelling, and human devotion, prepares us to explore how it has been remembered, interpreted, and celebrated across generations, maintaining its presence in history, legend, and imagination. The garden that never dies extends far beyond its terraces, water channels, and fragrant groves. Its influence resonates through the layers of cultural memory, where history, legend, and imagination intersect. Across generations, storytellers, poets, and chroniclers have preserved its essence, ensuring that the garden continues to inhabit both physical landscapes and the landscapes of the mind. Memory and myth interweave, transforming concrete features into symbols, experiences into narratives, and fleeting encounters into enduring stories. In this process, the garden becomes both a repository of history and a canvas for human creativity, a space where the past is remembered, interpreted, and reimagined. Oral traditions play a central role in shaping cultural memory. Stories passed down through families, communities, and local lore recount hidden groves, eternal blooms, secret watercourses, and sacred pavilions. These tales, though often embellished, preserve insights into the garden's design, use, and significance. They encode information about terraces, planting patterns, and ceremonial practices, blending fact and imagination in ways that guide subsequent generations. Listening to these oral narratives, modern researchers and visitors alike can sense the rhythms of history, the priorities of caretakers, and the cultural values embedded in every corner of the garden. Written accounts complement these oral traditions, providing detailed observations of the garden's physical and symbolic dimensions. Chronicles, travelogues, and diaries capture sensory experiences, noting the interplay of fragrance, sound, light, and shade. Some texts describe architectural features, botanical arrangements, or waterworks, while others emphasize the emotional or philosophical responses they inspired. By juxtaposing these accounts, scholars can reconstruct the garden's cultural significance, revealing how people of different times and places engaged with, interpreted, and celebrated its beauty and mystery. Mythic narratives infuse the garden with symbolic meaning that transcends its physicality. Legends of eternal blooms, magical waters, and hidden chambers suggest a space where human aspiration, wonder, and moral imagination converge. These myths are more than fanciful stories. They serve as cultural guides, emphasizing themes of patience, attentiveness, reverence, and the pursuit of knowledge. By embedding moral and philosophical ideas within tales of the garden, communities ensured that the landscape functioned as both a physical and symbolic space, where engagement with nature also nurtured ethical reflection and spiritual growth. Artistic depictions reinforce this cultural memory, capturing the garden's form, atmosphere, and symbolic resonance. Paintings, sketches, illuminated manuscripts, and decorative motifs reproduce terraces, groves, and water features, often emphasizing mood, light, and perspective over strict accuracy. These visual records allow modern observers to sense the garden as experienced by previous generations, preserving not only its structure but its emotional and imaginative impact. In this way, art becomes a bridge between memory, myth, and sensory experience, reinforcing the garden's enduring presence in cultural consciousness. Music, poetry, and ritual further embed the garden into cultural memory. Songs inspired by its beauty, poems reflecting on its symbolism, and ceremonial practices enacted within its spaces transmit its essence across generations. These cultural expressions encode attention to detail, rhythm, and emotional resonance, allowing the garden's influence to extend beyond physical boundaries. The combination of narrative, visual, and performative elements ensures that memory of the garden is multisensory, immersive, and persistent, weaving together tangible and intangible threads into a coherent, lasting tapestry. Time amplifies the garden's mythic dimension. As centuries pass, details fade, terraces collapse, water channels shift, and plants die or are replanted. Yet memory and myth preserve the garden's core qualities: endurance, beauty, harmony, and mystery. The act of remembering becomes an act of recreation, where storytellers, artists, and historians reconstruct the garden according to both evidence and imagination. This process highlights the dynamic nature of cultural memory, where the garden's identity evolves in dialogue with human perception, desire, and interpretation, rather than remaining static or purely archival. Cultural memory also shapes contemporary engagement with the garden. Visitors, researchers, and enthusiasts arrive with knowledge, stories, and expectations passed down through generations. This pre-existing framework of memory and myth enhances perception, creating layers of experience that blend historical observation with imaginative participation. As one walks along terraces, explores hidden groves, or observes flowering plants, the echo of past stories informs attention, guiding interpretation, and deepening connection. The garden becomes a living narrative, shaped not only by physical reality, but by the accumulation of cultural memory and mythic resonance. Importantly, the intertwining of memory and myth emphasizes that the garden's significance is not limited to factual accuracy. While archaeology, historical records, and botanical studies provide valuable information, the power of the garden lies in its ability to inspire wonder, reflection, and imagination. Legends and cultural memory act as interpretive lenses, guiding perception and enriching experience. They remind us that landscapes are not inert; they acquire meaning through human engagement, storytelling, and the careful preservation of memory. Ultimately, the garden that never dies thrives in the spaces between history and imagination, evidence and legend, memory and myth. Its terraces, groves, and fountains are both physical reality and symbolic canvas, supporting a rich tapestry of narratives that have endured across centuries. Cultural memory ensures continuity, allowing each generation to participate in a dialogue with the past, reconstructing, reflecting, and imagining anew. The garden in this sense is immortal, not only because of its stones, plants, or water, but because it inhabits the human mind, heart, and spirit, inspiring reverence, curiosity, and creative engagement. As we move from cultural memory and myth to the garden's contemporary relevance, these narratives prepare us to consider how modern discovery, conservation, and interpretation continue the dialogue, bridging past and present, while sustaining the garden's timeless essence. The garden that never dies continues to captivate modern explorers, archaeologists, historians, and conservationists. Rediscovering its terraces, water channels, and botanical treasures requires meticulous research, patience, and reverence for centuries of accumulated knowledge. Modern discovery is guided not only by scientific methodology, but also by the whispers of legend, historical texts, and oral memory, creating a dialogue between the present and the past. Every excavation, survey, and botanical study uncovers fragments of a living story, bridging centuries of human engagement with the garden's enduring mystery. Technological advancements have transformed the way researchers engage with the garden. Aerial imaging, ground-penetrating radar, and digital mapping allow archaeologists to detect hidden terraces, buried structures, and ancient irrigation systems without disturbing fragile layers of soil. Soil analysis and pollen studies reveal plant species, planting patterns, and environmental conditions from centuries past. These tools provide insight into the garden's design, ecological mastery, and the sophisticated vision of its creators. Yet technology alone cannot capture the garden's full essence. Imagination, interpretation, and sensitivity to legend remain essential in understanding its layered reality. Modern botanical studies complement archaeological exploration, uncovering the garden's ecological richness. Resilient plant species, surviving in terraces, traces of seeds and pollen, and historical horticultural practices provide a living record of cultivation, experimentation, and ecological knowledge. Conservationists work to preserve these species, recreating historical planting patterns where possible, and protecting delicate groves from environmental degradation. Each plant is a connection to the past, a reminder that the garden's vitality has always depended on attentive care, observation, and human engagement. Conservation efforts extend beyond plants to include terraces, water channels, and other architectural features. Restoration projects aim to stabilize structures, prevent erosion, and reconstruct features with respect for historical accuracy. These efforts require balancing preservation with accessibility, ensuring that visitors can experience the garden's beauty and mystery while maintaining its integrity. By carefully documenting and protecting each element, modern conservationists continue the legacy of past caretakers, honoring centuries of design, labor, and reverence. Public engagement plays an essential role in sustaining the garden's legacy. Educational programs, guided tours, and interpretive materials invite contemporary audiences to experience the garden thoughtfully, bridging the gap between historical understanding and personal connection. By fostering awareness and appreciation, these initiatives ensure that the garden remains relevant, inspiring wonder, reflection, and stewardship across generations. Visitors, in turn, become participants in the garden's ongoing narrative, contributing to its living memory and reinforcing the continuity of its cultural and ecological significance. Modern discovery also involves reconciling legend with evidence. Tales of hidden chambers, eternal blooms, and sacred fountains guide inquiry, while reminding researchers that the garden's meaning extends beyond physical reality. Some discoveries align with these stories, while others challenge or refine them. In every case, the interplay between myth and observation enriches understanding, highlighting the garden's dual nature as both historical artifact and imaginative landscape. Scientists and storytellers alike navigate this delicate balance, preserving factual knowledge while honoring the mystery that defines the garden's enduring appeal. Global awareness has increased efforts to protect the garden from environmental and human threats. Climate change, pollution, urban encroachment, and unsustainable tourism pose challenges that require innovative solutions. Conservation strategies integrate ecological, archaeological, and cultural perspectives, recognizing that the garden's survival depends on preserving both its material elements and its symbolic significance. Each action, whether planting, stabilizing structures, or educating the public, contributes to sustaining the garden's vitality, ensuring that it remains a source of inspiration, reflection, and wonder. Modern research also uncovers previously hidden aspects of the garden's history. Cross-disciplinary studies in archaeology, botany, art history, and anthropology reveal new insights into its design, social significance, and cultural impact. These findings deepen understanding of the garden as a product of human creativity, ecological mastery, and spiritual engagement. By connecting material evidence with legend, memory, and symbolic meaning, contemporary scholars reconstruct a fuller picture of the garden's past, illuminating its continuing relevance and beauty. Every modern discovery reinforces the garden's timelessness. Excavated terraces, revived plant species, and restored water channels provide tangible proof of enduring design and care. Yet the garden's spirit remains intangible. The sense of mystery, the poetic resonance of legend, and the immersive experience of contemplation are preserved only through careful interpretation, storytelling, and personal engagement. In this way, modern exploration does not diminish wonder, but enhances it, allowing contemporary visitors to inhabit a space where past and present, fact and imagination converge. Ultimately, the garden that never dies is sustained through a combination of scientific inquiry, conservation, and imaginative participation. Modern discovery and preservation honor the vision of past creators, while inviting new generations to engage thoughtfully, reflect deeply, and experience its beauty. By bridging history, legend, and contemporary stewardship, the garden remains a living testament to human creativity, ecological knowledge, and enduring fascination. In protecting and understanding it today, we ensure that its mysteries, lessons, and poetic resonance continue to inspire, just as they have for centuries. As we move to the final section, this ongoing engagement with the garden, through study, conservation, and experience, prepares us to reflect on its legacy, its enduring influence, and the sense of wonder that ensures it truly never dies. The garden that never dies continues to captivate modern explorers, archaeologists, historians, and conservationists. Rediscovering its terraces, water channels, and botanical treasures requires meticulous research, patience, and reverence for centuries of accumulated knowledge. Modern discovery is guided not only by scientific methodology, but also by the whispers of legend, historical texts, and oral memory, creating a dialogue between the present and the past. Every excavation, survey, and botanical study uncovers fragments of a living story, bridging centuries of human engagement with the garden's enduring mystery. Technological advancements have transformed the way researchers engage with the garden. Aerial imaging, ground-penetrating radar, and digital mapping allow archaeologists to detect hidden terraces, buried structures, and ancient irrigation systems without disturbing fragile layers of soil. Soil analysis and pollen studies reveal plant species, planting patterns, and environmental conditions from centuries past. These tools provide insight into the garden's design, ecological mastery, and the sophisticated vision of its creators. Yet technology alone cannot capture the garden's full essence. Imagination, interpretation, and sensitivity to legend remain essential in understanding its layered reality. Modern botanical studies complement archaeological exploration, uncovering the garden's ecological richness. Resilient plant species, surviving in terraces, traces of seeds and pollen, and historical horticultural practices provide a living record of cultivation, experimentation, and ecological knowledge. Conservationists work to preserve these species, recreating historical planting patterns where possible, and protecting delicate groves from environmental degradation. Each plant is a connection to the past, a reminder that the garden's vitality has always depended on attentive care, observation, and human engagement. Conservation efforts extend beyond plants to include terraces, water channels, and other architectural features. Restoration projects aim to stabilize structures, prevent erosion, and reconstruct features with respect for historical accuracy. These efforts require balancing preservation with accessibility, ensuring that visitors can experience the garden's beauty and mystery while maintaining its integrity. By carefully documenting and protecting each element, modern conservationists continue the legacy of past caretakers, honoring centuries of design, labor, and reverence. Public engagement plays an essential role in sustaining the garden's legacy. Educational programs, guided tours, and interpretive materials invite contemporary audiences to experience the garden thoughtfully, bridging the gap between historical understanding and personal connection. By fostering awareness and appreciation, these initiatives ensure that the garden remains relevant, inspiring wonder, reflection, and stewardship across generations. Visitors, in turn, become participants in the garden's ongoing narrative, contributing to its living memory and reinforcing the continuity of its cultural and ecological significance. Modern discovery also involves reconciling legend with evidence. Tales of hidden chambers, eternal blooms, and sacred fountains guide inquiry, while reminding researchers that the garden's meaning extends beyond physical reality. Some discoveries align with these stories, while others challenge or refine them. In every case, the interplay between myth and observation enriches understanding, highlighting the garden's dual nature as both historical artifact and imaginative landscape. Scientists and storytellers alike navigate this delicate balance, preserving factual knowledge while honoring the mystery that defines the garden's enduring appeal. Global awareness has increased efforts to protect the garden from environmental and human threats. Climate change, pollution, urban encroachment, and unsustainable tourism pose challenges that require innovative solutions. Conservation strategies integrate ecological, archaeological, and cultural perspectives, recognizing that the garden's survival depends on preserving both its material elements and its symbolic significance. Each action, whether planting, stabilizing structures, or educating the public, contributes to sustaining the garden's vitality, ensuring that it remains a source of inspiration, reflection, and wonder. Modern research also uncovers previously hidden aspects of the garden's history. Cross-disciplinary studies in archaeology, botany, art history, and anthropology reveal new insights into its design, social significance, and cultural impact. These findings deepen understanding of the garden as a product of human creativity, ecological mastery, and spiritual engagement. By connecting material evidence with legend, memory, and symbolic meaning, contemporary scholars reconstruct a fuller picture of the garden's past, illuminating its continuing relevance and beauty. Every modern discovery reinforces the garden's timelessness. Excavated terraces, revived plant species, and restored water channels provide tangible proof of enduring design and care. Yet the garden's spirit remains intangible. The sense of mystery, the poetic resonance of legend, and the immersive experience of contemplation are preserved only through careful interpretation, storytelling, and personal engagement. In this way, modern exploration does not diminish wonder but enhances it, allowing contemporary visitors to inhabit a space where past and present, fact and imagination, converge. Ultimately, the garden that never dies is sustained through a combination of scientific inquiry, conservation, and imaginative participation. Modern discovery and preservation honor the vision of past creators, while inviting new generations to engage thoughtfully, reflect deeply, and experience its beauty. By bridging history, legend, and contemporary stewardship, the garden remains a living testament to human creativity, ecological knowledge, and enduring fascination. In protecting and understanding it today, we ensure that its mysteries, lessons, and poetic resonance continue to inspire, just as they have for centuries. As we move to the final section, this ongoing engagement with the garden, through study, conservation, and experience, prepares us to reflect on its legacy, its enduring influence, and the sense of wonder that ensures it truly never dies.